You know what's better than cancelling a curse? Replacing a curse with a bracha. And you know what's better than replacing a curse with a bracha? Transforming the curse itself into a bracha, which of course is the story of Bilam's attempts to curse the Jewish people. And it has a very powerful lesson about the so-called curses that we have to turn into blessings in our own avodas Hashem. In Pasuk, the Pasuk says, "Vayochem Bilam aboiker," that Bilam got up early in the morning, and he saddled his donkey, and he went together with the officials of Moav. Rashi quotes those words that he saddled his donkey. When his Mefarish explains what happened there, that Bilam, such a great man, saddled his own donkey. From here we learn that hatred disrupts normal conventional behavior. That Bilam, out of his hatred for the Jewish people and his enthusiasm to chas v'shalom curse them, saddled his own donkey. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to which the Eibishter replied, Rasha, you wicked person, kvar kidam chavrom aviem. Their forefather Avram already got in before you, doing something similar. Shenemar, as it says, Vayashkem Avram ba'boiker, vayachvosh es chamoroi. That at the time of the Akedah, it says that Avram Avinu got up early in the morning and he saddled his donkey. So, is the Cherenit in ganzen Glattix? It's not absolutely clear what Rashi is telling us over here. What was Bilam's motivation to saddle his donkey? Rashi tells us, hatred. Tzid, hatred for the Eden, and the nature of hatred is that it upsets normal conventional behavior. Whereas, lahavdil, what Rashi says that Avram Avinu, the Eibishter says, came beforehand, that's the exact opposite. That is, Avram Avinu, out of enthusiasm to do what the Eibishter told him, that's why he's getting up early. So, how do the two square off? How do they link? So, quite a number of places in Chazal, Gemaras, Midrashim, that speak about this idea of the fact that out of his hatred, Bilam got up early and he saddled his own donkey. But the only one that speaks about the fact that the Eibishter then said, but Avram Avinu came before you, that's only in the Medrash. This is what the Medrash says. Vayashke means kol dam ba'omad bezizus hu be'atzmai. That Vayashke means he got up with alacrity, with enthusiasm by himself. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then the Eibishter said to him, Rasha kvar yidamcha ki damcha Avram Avinu avihem, like it is Yitzchak b'noi. That don't you think you're so enthusiastic in your fight against the Jewish people? Avram Avinu got there before you, and he was enthusiastic to saddle his donkey to prepare for the Akedah. That the pasuk says Avram got up early in the morning and he saddled his donkey. So what's the Medrash telling us, and is it the same message as Rashi? And so we could read into this Medrash that the emphasis is that it's telling us about how amazing it is when a person does something with energy and enthusiasm. And then after you've told us about the value of somebody doing something with enthusiasm, then it points out that Bilam saddled the donkey himself. But the main thing is that Bilam got up early in the morning, which shows his enthusiasm. Because in the conversation that the Eibishter had with Bilam, the Eibishter tells him, go with these people. So it could be the Medrash is telling us that Bilam says, okay, I now have an instruction from Hashem to go with these people, so let me do that with enthusiasm, and in the merit of that, that will give him the opportunity to actually succeed in cursing the Jewish people, chas v'shalom. And even though he knew that the Eibishter didn't really want him to do that, he thought he could somehow convince the Eibishter, tempt the Eibishter to support him by showing this alacrity and enthusiasm. And if them Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so the Eibishter said, forget about it, it's not going to work. That their forefather Avram already has zizus before you had zizus to go to the Akedah. That's the Medrash, a potential way that you could read the Medrash. Certainly not something you could put into Rashi's explanation. Rashi doesn't say anything about zizus, alacrity, enthusiasm, nor about the time of day he got up to saddle his donkey. Und der Adgashi is no Refen Chavashu Be'atzmai. Rashi only focuses on the fact that Bilam personally saddled his own donkey. And the reason he did it is because he was mad where he was crazy with anger, with hatred. In which case, the question is, isn't it moving? It doesn't make sense. What value, what credit did Bilam think he would get out of doing something enthusiastically when his enthusiasm is driven by hatred? So why does he think that that's going to be something positive? That David has to say, don't worry, I'm going to cancel it. Well, what's positive about it? So let's take it a step further. Even when you go back to the Medrash and you pay close attention to it, you could see that even the Medrash couldn't be focused specifically on him trying to leverage his enthusiasm as a reason he should be able to curse the Jewish people. As Bilam's Cheshman is given as that Bilam thought because of his enthusiasm he could get away with the opposite of brachas. Why can we not really say that's what the Medrash is teaching us? Because this comment that the Medrash makes about Bilam getting up and saddling his donkey is a follow-on from a previous comment, which was, the Medrash tells us a principle. Whatever direction a person wants to go, the Eibishter will cause opportunity for the person to go that way. Originally, the Eibishter told him, don't go on this mission together with Balak. Once he had the chutzpah to push anyway and to go with them, then the Eibishter allowed him to go. How do we know that? Because the pasuk says that the Eibishter was angry, so to speak, that Bilam went. Baruch Hu says the Medrash, the Eibishter said to him, Rasha eini chafetz bibudun shel rishoyim. The Eibishter said to Bilam, this incredible expression, you wicked person, I don't even care to have wicked people wiped out. In other words, I don't want to see you destroyed. But because you're pushing this agenda and you want to go on this self-destructive path, go. But I'm telling you, but you're only going to be able to say what I want you to say, to teach you that he had been warned before he went, and then it gets into the conversation that he got up and he saddled his own donkey. In other words, the funness move on. The context helps you to understand what the Medrash is telling us. As I you can't argue now that Bilam believed that getting up early in the morning is to be enthusiastic to fulfill what the Eibishter said. Because the Eibishter said, don't go. He said, it's on your head. Adrabah, to the contrary. Therefore was der Eibishter hat ihm gewarnt und gesagt, because the Eibishter warned him and said, if you want to go destroy yourself, go ahead. Then he knew, obviously, if he's going to go, it's contrary to what the Eibishter wants. So it cannot be that he's using that to try and leverage a way to be able to get his wishes. The only way that we could possibly squeeze this kind of approach into the Medrash would be to say this. The fact that Bilam, knowing that what he's about to do is contrary to what the Eibishter wants, still gets up with that enthusiasm and saddles his own donkey, and he's up early in the morning, that is a sense of suicide. Benigud to Mesiras Nefesh Mitzad HaKedusha, which is the polar opposite of Mesiras Nefesh, which is holy. This is not Mesiras Nefesh, this is a suicide mission. He's a kamikaze. Despite the fact that the Eibishter warned him, what you're about to do will destroy you, he still went enthusiastically, gung-ho, he's going to do this. Because he believed that his enthusiasm would attract impure power that would help him achieve his objective. Or now, if them to which the Eibishter said, you think you're going to be able to get the backing of Koiches HaTumah, your enthusiasm is already pre-cancelled by Avram Avinu Lahavdil's enthusiasm. And the Mesiras Nefesh von Laket is Yitzchok B'noi, because Avram Avinu had true Mesiras Nefesh to be willing to sacrifice his son. If you think about it, being willing to sacrifice his son in a certain respect is a greater Mesiras Nefesh than being willing to sacrifice his own life. So you could still squeeze into the Medrash that the conversation is around the enthusiasm, the zizos. In Rashi, you cannot. In Rashi, it's clear that the whole conversation is specifically around saddling a donkey. Who saddles the donkey? Not even when they were doing so. We'll see this in three ways. But again, Pirush Rashi, with regards to Pirush Rashi, is Allah firstly canal. Rashi does not mention the concept of speed. He doesn't quote the pasuk, the part of the pasuk that says Bab Boiker in the morning, which would have emphasized his enthusiasm. Clearly, that's not what Rashi is emphasizing. Number 2, base. Rashi doesn't say anything about the Eibishter warning Bilam, you're going to self-destruct. But to the contrary, Rashi is pasuk. In fact, in the previous pasuk, where the Eibishter said to Bilam, if they have come to call you, says Rashi, if you think this is going to be beneficial to you, you think you're going to get some reward from the people of Balak, go ahead, gesund hate. The exact opposite of, you're going to destroy yourself. And last, Gimel, as in Mefaret, as dos verbunden mit dem, was Avram holach lake des Yitzchak. Even though Rashi says that Avram Avinu already saddled his donkey before, he doesn't contextualize it as part of the Akedah, which would have spoken about the idea of Mesiras Nefesh. So clearly, that's not where Rashi is coming from. So our question is, how did Bilam believe that getting up out of hatred and saddling his own donkey out of hatred was someone going to help his cause? What makes this an even greater question is the this principle that hatred disrupts convention, and on the opposite extreme, tremendous love also upsets convention and people behave in unexpected ways. This is given by Avram, like Avram Avinu did. As we've already mentioned, is noted in a few places from Chazal. We're going to look over here, firstly, in the Gemara. I think Gemara from Pasuk, the Gemara commenting on the Pasuk, where the Pasuk says that Bilam got up in the morning and he saddled his donkey. He says, love overcomes the hierarchy of convention. In other words, the dignified convention. It's an undignified for Avram Avinu to have to saddle his own donkey. We learn it from Avram, we learn it from Avram, as the Pasuk says that he got up early in the morning. Likewise, hatred also disrupts the hierarchy of dignity. In other words, a dignified person like Bilam should not have to saddle his own donkey. We learn that that he got up early in the morning and he saddled his donkey. Okay, so what's the distinction between what the Gemara is doing and what Rashi does? Aber, first of all, the Gemara there, the Gemara doesn't say Avram Avinu predates Bilam, and therefore his alacrity overcomes Bilam's. It doesn't say that. Number 2, the Lashon in Gemara Sinema Vatela Shura Shol Gedula. It's interesting. Rashi uses the word mekalkeles, that it destroys or damages the normal convention. Here, the Gemara says it cancels the normal convention of Gedula, of greatness. That is Nitvi in Rashi and Medrash. That's different language to what Rashi, which is most important for our conversation, and the Medrash say, where they use mekalkeles and Hashura without the word Gedula. So that's how it appears in the Gemara. Let's have a look in the Medrash, which is the Bereshis Rabbah. In Medrash Rabbah, Mekalkeles es Hashura, it says that love disrupts convention. Tichsiv, as the pasuk says, Vayashkem Avram Baboiker V'Gomer, that Avram Avinu got up and saddled his own donkey, and the Medrash then asks, V'lo Yehoyu lo Kama Avodim, did he not have enough servants who could have done this for him? The reason he did it this way is because he was so in love with the Eibishter and wanted to do what the Eibishter wants, that disrupted the whole system. Likewise, the Medrash continues, the same applies to hatred. Bilam got up in the morning to saddle his donkey. Did he not also have many servants? But there also, you have the principle that hatred completely disrupts normal behavior. Then the Medrash continues. Then Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai points out that let the one saddling come and stand up against and over the other saddling. In other words, look at the saddling that Avram Avinu did to fulfill the Eibishter's wishes. That should come, and Vayishlach Avram Esad v'Gomer, that Avram Avinu was going to go sacrifice Yitzchak. And let that saddling overrun the saddling of Bilam, cancel his malevolent intentions, and protect the Yidden. That seems to be very much what Rashi was saying. Avram Avinu was already there before you. He already showed this kind of dedication before you. Bilam, your dedication is not worth anything. But Rashi says, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, that the Eibusha told Bilam, Rasha Kfar Kidamcha. Not that Ta'amoid, that the one's going to stand against the other, but specifically that Avraham Avinu was already there way before you. There's an emphasis on the fact that it was before. That implies that Bilam saddling his donkey, he was aware of Avraham Avinu, and he had an intention. Is given to him for Kfar Kidamcha. The response to his intention is going to be, Avraham Avinu was already there before you. Whereas the Medrash that says, let this saddling overcome that saddling, doesn't tell us that there was an intention that Bilam necessarily had by saddling his donkey early, or himself. Rashi's emphasizing, there's an intention of here, which goes back to our original question. What value could there be in the intention of saying, look how much I hate these people, now support me? Shloimer Abir Bozeh, to understand this, let's dig further into the story. Balak had gedungen Bilam kedei lechana ora liasamazeh. Balak he hired Bilam to do what? Curse Eden. Nachdem aber wie der Eibishter hat ihm nicht gelassen gehen und danach hat ihm safe gesagt. But after the Eibishter prevented originally Bilam from going, and then eventually told him, you'll only be able to say what I tell you to say. The fact that Bilam still went, knowing that this is a mission that's not going to go according to his plan. The only reason he went is he thought that there was a way that he could somehow convince the Eibishter to still support his intentions. How would he do that? Either he's going to bring up something negative about the Yidden, and maybe that would work, that the Eibishter would support him. As Rashi later points out, after he failed, and he saw that the Eibishter does not want to curse the Yidden. Now, in fact, to the contrary, the Eibishter wants to bless them. And in fact, Bilam becomes the tool of that bracha twice. And he said, okay, I have another method. Let me bring up their averas, and the curse will attach to their averas. And Rashi points out in the words where it says that he turned his attention towards the desert. Says Rashi ketargumai. You got to understand it the way that Targum Unclus explains it, which is what? What does he say? He turned his face towards the Egel Hazav that the Yidden had made in the desert. And he thought by bringing up the Cheta Egel, that would attract negative energy to the Yidden. So here too is the pure von Chavoshubi Atzmoi, the idea that Bilam wants to saddle his own donkey is given a tam goli sinema kalkeles v'chulei. That's clear why he's doing it. It's because he hates the Yidden so much, he doesn't wait for his servants to put the saddle on the donkey. So Bilam is doch aber given a koisem. But Bilam didn't just do that because of his enthusiasm. Bilam, as we know, was a sorcerer. In addition, as he points out in the Ha'ara, that Bilam is a Navi, and it's a whole question, was he first a Navi, then a sorcerer, etc. It's not just that he wants to saddle his donkey because he's so enthusiastic to attack the Eden. There's intention over here. The intention is mitzayin kilkel ashura, by disrupting the normal way of doing things. He intended to use that as a backhanded criticism of the Jewish people, to expose the Jewish people. He says, look, I'm behaving in a way that is unexpected, that is not the correct way to behave. And let that remind the Eibishter of how many times in the Midbar the Yidden in a negative way behaved outside of the framework that the Eibishter made. Und damit, bringen dem Hefech Avachas Vishalem von Edom zum Eibishter, und made it von Eibishter zu Eden. So what does Bilam want to show? Look, the Eibishter, they don't love you as much as you want. Because how many times did they do things against what you insisted or what you instructed? Therefore, he's hoping that the Eibishter will say, you know what? My love is also going to be Chas V'Shalom diminished. So that's his attempt. His attempt is not just to show his hatred. He's trying to show that the Yidden, Kavayochel, hate the Eibishter to some extent. Because look at all the things they did wrong. Oh no, if them Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, here's the big chiddush of Rashi that the Eibishter says in return, it doesn't help to try and illustrate their lack of love for the Eibishter. They come from a forefather, Avraham, who is all about love of the Eibishter. No matter what you're going to raise about their behavior, their misbehavior, it's meaningless. Because there's already Avraham Avinu. He also saddled his donkey himself, and you know why? Because he was driven by extreme love of the Eibishter, which broke all the rules. Because of the tremendous love that Avraham Avinu showed to the Eibishter, that he didn't wait for his servants to help him with his donkey, that's going to be a merit that will protect the Yidden in such a way that all of Bilam's personal hatred to the Yidden and trying to dredge up some kind of hatred from the Yidden to the Eibishter is meaningless, it's neutral, it cannot have an effect. We see this in the parasha. Multiple times through the course of this whole story, the schus avos keeps coming up again and again in the story. We see that a lot of Bilam's calculations, how many mizbachos he was going to bring, how many karbonos he was going to bring, because he was trying consistently to cancel the schus avos. And even as Rashi points out, if you analyze the brachas he gave the Yidden, you could understand what his intention was in the opposite, which included trying to undermine the schus avos. And it doesn't work, says the Eibishter. It's not going to help. You could try whatever method you wish, you cannot undo the schus avos. Nochmer. Besides the fact that his attempt to show this tremendous hatred and dig up all of the negative about the Yidden is doomed to failure because of Avraham Avinu's schus. Besides that, you have to realize it's not just that Avraham Avinu protects us. Avraham is Avihem. He's our father, and therefore we are the heirs to this love of Hashem. It's not just something that happened centuries before. Und das, was die Form hat getroffen, als wir sagen, der Anhage gewesen nicht beifen sie, oder viele beifen aufchi. Bilam says, but you didn't always behave with this love of the Eibishter, and sometimes you behaved in a way that is the opposite of love. It says, that's a superficial experience that they have at a time. It's a tevach chas v'sholem u'regilis. It's not their nature. It's not their normal behavior. To the contrary, you know what is natural, what's wired in and baked into the Jewish people? Love of the Eibishter. Not just that once upon a time they had a great grandfather who loved the Eibishter. This is what a Yid is. Don't get distracted by the temporary lapses that a Jewish person has. You know what a Yid is? A Yid is somebody who loves the Eibishter to the point of Mekalkeles Ashura, and therefore Bilam, whatever you're going to try, meaningless. That's what Rashi wants to bring out. Now there's an incredible insight based on this Pirush Rashi. Because these two principles, that hatred or on the other extreme love, can disrupt the normal way of behaving, there are going to be two. We've already looked at one example of hatred that's illogical, Bilam, and one lahavdil of love, which is Avraham Avinu. The Medrash brings two others, Yosef and Parai. By Ava, bringt the Medrash die Dugma anal von Avram. So of course the Medrash quotes the example of Avram showing love to the Eibishter by saddling his own donkey. You also have the same thing. The Medrash points out that Yosef, he prepared his own chariot to go and greet his father. He went to welcome Yaakov to Mitzrayim. Says the Medrash, did Yosef not have servants who could do this? But because he had tremendous love for his father, so that overrode all the conventions. And by Sinner, bringt Yosef the Dugma from Bilam, and in an example of hatred, in addition to the example of Bilam, the Medrash brings the Dugma from Parai, the example of Parai chasing the Yidden after it says Mitzrayim. It says that he prepared his chariot. He had all these servants, but his hatred of the Yidden overrode the fact that he could call on his servants to do the dirty work. Euche Mechilta, redt sich wegen demselben Teichen. The Mechilta speaks on a similar note, mit derselben Gemäß, and also brings these same four examples on the positive side, Avraham and Yosef, and Lahavdil on the negative side, Para and Bilam. But there, the Mechilta doesn't use these words about love or hatred overriding normal behavior. No, Beloshin says it like this. There were four people who tied the saddles onto their donkeys or their horses or to their chariots with simcha. Simcha, not ava, not sinna. Avraham also simcha shenema yashkim goimer. So there was Avraham Avinu had simcha to go do the Akedah. Ela lichveda mokim for the Eibish's sake. Yosef also simcha shenema yaseh lichveda aviv. Yosef, out of tremendous simcha, even though he had all the servants, he wanted to do it for his father's honor. Bilam also simcha shenemar. Bilam had this tremendous simcha to go curse the Yidden chas v'shalom. And Paroi also b'simcha chulei, the Mechilta says that Paroi had this tremendous joy to go recapture the Eden and bring them back as slaves. So what's the difference between if he's talking about love and hatred on the one hand or simcha on the other? The Unterschied between zwischen die Leshonas, die Pilos mit San Mekalkeles Ashura, oder machmas simcha lekavit. So what are we seeing over here? We're seeing two completely different ways of expressing this principle. The one is love or hatred, mekalkeles, it disrupts the normal. The other is, simcha is driven by some kind of honor. What's the difference between them? If the way I'm doing something is I'm disrupting the normal conduct, whether that's driven by love or by hatred, that means that the action I'm taking is a disruptive action, not a constructive action. Whereas, if you say I'm doing this out of joy, in honor of the Eibishter, like Avraham Avinu, or in honor of my father, like Yosef, then is as matkish as dos apula shel simcha shel kavod amokim ad kavod aviv. That's constructive. That's something to add value to the honor given to the Eibishter or the honor given to his father. And likewise, you could say, with regards to Bilam and Paroi, it's not that they're undermining their normal behavior, it's that they're showing how much enthusiasm they have about the particular thing that they're looking to do, which has a practical difference. This is the fascinating insight of Rashi, that it actually has an impact in halacha. If I'm obligated to behave in this way or not. Let's use the example of Avraham Avinu and Yosef. They have a positive mitzvah, a requirement to show honor to the Eibishter, honor to his father. That's why you have to serve the Eibishter with simcha, because you have a responsibility. So, if it's a matter of simcha and kavod, then I'm obligated to do it. If it's a matter of undermining the normal way of behaving, I'm not obligated to do that. So what's Rashi's take? So in Rashi's take, even though he's essentially identifying the same theme right throughout all four scenarios, where he emphasizes not the fact that it was the enthusiasm of the time of day, but rather the personal engagement of doing the saddling themselves. But Rashi does use different language in two of the cases and different language in two of the cases. By Avram is a meforish. By Avram he says, "Vayachvesh hu ba'atzmoi v'letziv elechem ma'avodav she'ava mekalkeles ashura." By Avram Avinu he says the reason Avram saddled his own donkey and did not instruct his servants is because his love overrode the normal behavior. By Bilam likewise, with Bilam who saddled his own donkey, again Rashi says his hatred disrupted the normal behavior. Oh, but by Yosef and Rashi, whereas when it comes to the story of Yosef, Rashi says, that he personally prepared his chariot to be enthusiastic to go show honor to his father. Nothing about Mekalkeles Ashura. The same kind of language that Mechilta used. And by Paro, is in the first blow, who be atzmoi, and by Paro he doesn't clarify either way. He just says he made he prepared his own chariot. Das says in other words. By Avram and by Bilam, it says dinim from Kilkol Ashura. That when it comes to the story of Avraham Avinu, or Lahavdil, the story of Bilam, it's specifically about disrupting the normal conduct of a dignified person. Mashenka by Yosef is the inyan from Kavod Aviv, Lahavdil by Paro Canal, whereas by Yosef the whole focus is the kavod he's going to show his father, and the focus by Paro is his enthusiasm for this particular mission to go capture the Jewish people. Why is that relevant? Because it means this. Aleph. The first thing we're going to note is that Rashi says here in the story of Bilam is where we learn the idea that hatred can override the normal behavior. So in other words, what Rashi is telling us is when Paro did a similar thing, and you might have thought that it was his tremendous hatred that was disrupting the normal way of behaving, it's not the case. He actually had a normal motivation. There's something to benefit from going to chase the Yidden. First of all, if he's going to be the one to saddle his horse, to prepare his chariot, that will create enthusiasm between all of his soldiers that they need to participate. As Rashi himself points out on the words in the pasuk that says that Paro took his nation with him, that moshchim bidvarim, he enticed them with words. Lokinu, we suffered at their hands. They took our money. And we sent them away. Don't worry, I'm not going to treat you like other kings treat their subjects. I'm going to lead the charge. So maybe that's the reason why he was doing it, not because Mekalkeles Ashura. This is a strategic move. If he gets involved at the front of the line, everybody's going to join. Or simply because he was enthusiastic to go recover the resources, the assets that the Yidden had taken out of Mitzrayim. Second of all, this also explains why, when Rashi is telling us that Avraham Avinu was personally dedicated out of love to the Eibishter before Bilam, it doesn't say that it was specifically at the Akedah. Why not? Medrash, like the Medrash did. Rashi is der Adgosha doif der Minion von Avam al Kalkeles es Ashura und nicht et Tzivich Yuvi lakoit chulei. Because the whole purpose of Rashi over here is to speak about disrupting the normal behavior. If you're going to tell me it's to fulfill the Eibishter's instruction and command, that's not disruptive. Let's go deeper into the spiritual lesson, which is a very powerful lesson for us. Von Yener shel Torah and Pirush Rashi. The Torah von ganz Parashas Balak is the entire purpose and message of Parashas Balak is, as we see later on, that the Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Yidden, that the Eibishter did not want to listen to Bilam, that the Eibishter turned his curses into blessings, because the Eibishter loves you. That is the central point of everything in the story and all of the details in the story. The way that we have to read every single part of the story of Bilam is you have to read it as converting curse into bracha. We'll move on. And therefore, even when the Torah tells us about how Bilam's tremendous hatred was so obsessive that it made him overcome the normal way of behaving, that's also got to be on the path towards the bracha. Now, how does that hatred link into bracha? The explanation is this. Is in the Tzvei Kavim from Sumeira un Asei Tov. The ultimate summary of how we serve the Eibishter is in two paths, two channels, to stay away from the negative and to do that which is positive. The reason that we avoid bad is because we hate bad. We should have a sense of hatred against anything which contravenes what the Eibishter wants. And doing the positive, that should be driven by our love for Hashem. Ki, as the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, as the person who keeps mitzvahs properly, positive mitzvahs, that's the person who loves the Eibishter and wants to truly bond with the Eibishter. So that's generically the two areas of our avodas Hashem, and they also can be split into different layers or levels. It's possible that a person could say, listen, I'm going to stay away from bad because I hate what is bad, but it's in a measured, logical, rational way. Or I'm going to do what the Eibishter wants because I love the Eibishter, also in a defined way. Or you could have you could have a hatred that defies all limits, that does not fit with any of the conventions you'd expect. And likewise, a person can have this incredible love for the Eibishter, which is completely beyond any kind of boundaries. This is what Rashi is emphasizing. As the Ava built in Mugberes von Eden to Mekayim sein Rotzen Hashem, that when a Yid has this unlimited love towards the Eibishter to do what the Eibishter wants, bis as the Kiyam mitzvah shaloi alpim didav agbola v'cheshbon, to the extent that my dedication to doing the mitzvah is beyond anything that you could calculate, plan, strategize, expect, that comes from Avram Avihem. That's something we have inherited from Avram Avinu. Was Avos el Hashem is given hecher fun medida ugvul. He had love of the Eibishter which was completely beyond any boundaries. He had the kind of love of the Eibishter that broke the mold. Which is expressed in what we've been talking about, how he got up early in the morning to saddle his own donkey. Because Avram Avinu comes along before Bilam gets there. Not only does that mean that Avram Avinu was able to neutralize Bilam's negative intent to try and bring up negative stuff about us which would cause curses. It's not just that. He didn't just stop the problem. But rather Avram Avinu's dedication to the Eibishter turned things around 180 degrees and empowered us that we could also have sinah that is unbridled. What does that mean? That we should be able to have hatred for things which are contrary to what the Eibishter wants to the extreme. It might not feel natural for us. That's the koyach that we have. Not only does Avram Avinu inspire us with tremendous love, but tremendous love that can, as a result, create the most incredible hatred to that which is bad. Overmela is the shlilu zirus in sumer abofen shakul kalashura l'maylim did vagbola, and the net result of that would be that our hesitation against doing something which is wrong is mekalkeres asashura. It's completely beyond what you'd expect. That doesn't only define for us how much we're invested in either doing the positive mitzvahs or avoiding the negative averos. But it also determines the extent of the impact we have on the world through these avodas. Let's look at the pasuk itself. The pasuk says, "Va'Avram shteit, va'yachvesh es chamorei." It says that Avram Avinu saddled his donkey. The word chamor also alludes to the materialism of the human body. Like the well-known teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, Kisir Chamor, when you see the donkey, which means when you really pay close attention to the nature of your materialism, which is your body, and you think it's an impediment to spirituality. What do we learn? Work with it. Help the body. That we should refine the body, we should elevate the body, not destroy the body through self-flagellation, etc. That's what it means when it says that Avram Avinu saddled his donkey. The shach on the Torah says it means he saddled the matter, the materialistic. Didn't just saddle it, he conquered it. Needs to brechen dem guf, not to break the body, not to kevish and mavaris and dem chimir aguf, but rather to conquer, uplift, elevate, and refine the materialism of the body. Im einspannen und oistens und im guf in avedas Hashem, to use the body as a tool to serve the Eibishter. Valderch says it's not just the body. Likewise, im chimir bemoven akloli von der ganze Welt. It's all the matter of all existence. Milo asaretz v'chiv shor, as the Torah tells us right at the beginning of creation, you have to fill the world, and you have to conquer the world, which means turn it into the Eibishter's world. The Dvarim HaMutorim from Welt, that references things which the Torah permits, but are not necessarily automatically part of a mitzvah. Someone say, we have to saddle them, which means we have to conquer them, which means we have to schlep them into the world of Kedusha. So that's the love of Avram Avinu, which is unlimited. Then, but when you're talking about a different donkey, the donkey that belongs to Bilam, which is that means that you're now talking about the impure things of this world, the three impure klippes, which don't have the capacity for refinement. Well, my attitude to that has to be, under no circumstances. There's nothing to discuss. It's absolute sinner. It's absolute no is a full sentence. But it's not good enough just to get rid of the negative. The Torah tells us that the intention by Bilam was that the Eibishter wanted to and did turn the klolis into brachas. Main doch as the klola gufa vert nesapach li bracha. That means not only do we replace the klola with a bracha in its stead, but we turn the klola into a bracha. That's the inyan von isapcha. That represents a very developed level of serving the Eibishter where we transform the negative to positive. Zedonos naslik uzachias. Where those things that previously were our wanton transgressions now become our merits. Where the negative itself becomes converted to good. Not just that there was potentially a curse and now instead of it there's a bracha. No, the curse becomes the bracha. Now what does that mean in my own service of the Eibishter? It means this. Shura, we've been speaking about the Shura, the line, the channel, the hierarchy, the structure. Shuras hadin, that means the letter of the law, meant for when I'm following the letter of the law, whatever I'm doing to serve the Eibishter has a rational basis. It works in a particular order. There's an order that the Torah lays out, and I'm following that order. Especially when you consider that Rashi does not use the same language that we saw in the Gemara. Shura shel gedula, where it's all about greatness. No, it's a shura. This is the way that things are supposed to proceed. If we disrupt in a negative way the way the things are supposed to be, which means that a person breaks away from the straight and narrow line of Kedusha and does things which are contrary to what the Eibishter wants. The only reason that happens is because there's hatred of my own Yetzirah to my Yetzirah, hatred of Klippa to Kedusha. So how do I fix it? As we well know, anytime that you need to make a correction, you've got to go in the opposite extreme direction. So if a person disrupted their normal behavior, their holy behavior, their healthy behavior, and did something which was completely off the rails, how do you fix it? You've got to go to the opposite extreme. That's tshuva out of tremendous love to the Eibishter, which is beyond the shura. It's beyond even the channel of Kedusha. Those is the Kfar Avram. That's what the Eibush is telling Bilam, that Avram Avinu came already before you. Durch the Avarabam says nefesh from Avram Avinu, because of Avram Avinu's tremendous love and Messias nefesh was dos kumpi Rosh Israel, which is now inherited by every single Jewish person. It's in our blood. When I have that tremendous love of the Eibishter and Messias nefesh for what the Eibishter wants, that is going to reverse and transform the negative kilkal ashura into something positive. Dahainu meaning, as in itzutza kedusha vasapishura de kedusha kemezenit mevarezain. That means sparks of kedusha that I don't have access to. If I'm following the textbook of Torah, I don't have access to these sparks of kedusha. Warum? Die nitzutza kedusha welche seien in Raum gefallen in dvarim asurim von gimel klippes atmeyes kemen al pi Torah nit mevarezain. Because if I'm talking over here about Nitzotz of Kedusha that got embedded into the world of Klippa, Torah says I'm not allowed to go there, I'm not allowed to touch that stuff, I can't engage. In fact, to the contrary, Torah says, keep it away, arm's length. As Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, when I have tremendous tshuva motivated by love, which creates this absolute yearning and desire to connect to the Eibishter, then I can even transform that into positive. Take those nitzotos and link them to Kedusha. Kimavur in Tanya, as Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, as that those things that previously were literally the blemishes on our record now become the shining merits that we have. Does that mean and he has a brilliant example of how you see these mystical concepts embedded in the Pshat of Rashi. The Gazatech from the Parashah from Balak is, the whole message of Parashas Balak is, as trotz dem was Balak hat gedungen Bilam to Mekalel sein Eden, despite the fact that Balak hired Bilam in order to curse the Eden, is aber die Tetzode von Gvenit no bittel aklolis. The result was not only the cancelling of those intended curses, no nochmals die Klolis einen geworden ein Inyan von Bracha, but the fact that the same thing which was a klola became a bracha. There's a pasuk says, "V'lo ova avay lekecha l'Yishmael Bilam ayafech avay lekecha l'chos avkol l'bracha kahivcha avay lekecha." Not the Eibusha not only didn't want to listen to Bilam, but specifically he transformed what Bilam had intended into a bracha. That's what Rashi is alluding to. The very first action that Bilam took to go on this journey to attempt to curse the Yidden, that this tremendous hatred that he had, to the extent that he was willing to saddle his own donkey, was immediately cancelled and transformed. How? By the fact that Avraham Avinu already preempted all of this by showing this incredible love to the Eibishter. This incredible love that the Eibishter shows to Yidden, which smashes all the boundaries. By us showing this incredible love towards the Eibishter, like Avraham Avinu showed towards the Eibishter, that automatically turns everything around, changes the sin of Bilam, turns it into bracha, and we should see in our own lives our dedication to the Eibishter, Mekalkeles Sashura, and as a result, the Eibishter turning the klolos to brachas, to the ultimate bracha of the Gula Mitzvah Shlema.